Hello everyone, my name is Laura Lopez and I am part of the BMC Helix Business Workflow support team. In this webinar, we'll take a look at the approval configuration in business workflows. The agenda for today will start off with an overview of approvals. Then we will talk about the steps that are part of the approval configuration. We will do a demo on this. We will see how can we attach an approval to a case. Then we will discuss the different options there are to approve cases. And finally, we will share some references with more information on approvals. So what is an approval? An approval is an end-to-end process that starts when a case is sent for approval and ends with an approval outcome. When working with cases in business workflows, there can be times when certain cases might need approvals from, let's say, a manager. This before the agents can proceed with the cases. And these approvals can be required at different stages of the case lifecycle. For this, we need to configure an approval by defining an expression to evaluate if the approval should be triggered, a status that will trigger the approval process, and the status that the case will move to based on the approval result. Once the approval has been configured, business workflows cases can now use such approval. This, of course, based on the expression we defined while configuring the approval. After the approval has been attached to the case, this will be waiting to be approved now. An approver can be an employee, a business unit or support group, or even a vendor. The case will then transition to a new status as defined while configuring the approval. Let's now take a look at the approval configuration steps. As mentioned before, in order to have an approval added to our case, there is a process we need to follow to configure an approval. For this webinar, we will create an approval flow, then we will create an approval chain, and we will create an approval mapping. We will talk about each one of these steps in the following slides. An approval flow determines a specific person or group of users who need to approve the case. It defines how approvals should be executed, and it also allows the administrator to group similar types of approvals based on types of cases, lines of business, and user groups. An approval flow is formed by two entities, a flow group, and one or more flows. A flow group is a logical grouping of approvals that might be based on the type of cases, line of business, and other criteria you might define. An administrator can also use a flow group to define an approval process that belongs to a specific group or create a chain of approvals. A flow will determine for which case the approval needs to be run and the approvers who need to approve the case. There are two types of flows that are available for you to use. The first one is the level up approval flow. This is a manager approval flow that is used to specify the levels of approval that a case requires. So for example, let's say an employee requests for a performance award for a colleague, and the case for the request needs two levels of approval. First, the employee's manager approves the case, and then the manager's manager approves the case. The second type of flow is the general approval flow. This is used to define multiple approvers for a case. It also determines whether all or one of the approvers must approve the case. For example, an employee requests for a transfer from one location to another location. The case gets created and it needs to be approved by any member of the HR support group. In the following demo, we'll take a look at the steps on how to create a level up approval flow and a general approval flow. So the first thing that we're going to do in order to create a new approval flow is we're going to log into the Business Workflows app. Once we're in the workspace, we're going to click on Settings, Then we're going to click on Approvals and then Approval Configuration. In here, we can see the list of the different type of tickets that we can create an approval configuration for. For this demo, we're going to select the case option. And then we're going to click on the approval flows. As you can see on the left side, we have the flow groups section. On the right side, we have the flows. For this demo, we're going to use the out-of-the-box group, which is the BWFA group. And as you can see, we already have one flow, the manager approval flow. This is level up type of flow. It's also out of the box. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to click on the new level up flow, and we're going to fill in all required fields. We're going to start with the flow name. Then we need to define the number of levels that we require for this approval. In my case, I'm going to do 1. So this means only the requester's manager approval will be required. And then we need to define a qualification. I'm going to select the priority field. And then I'm going to do equals to critical. So this qualification will be used to define if the approval should get added to the case. These options right here, for now we're going to leave them as it is, and then we're going to click on Save. So now we have created a new level up flow. Now let's say you want to create a new general flow. So we're going to click on that option. We're going to need to provide some details. So we're going to start with the flow name. Next, we need to define a qualification. So again, I'm going to select the priority field. In here you have different options, different fields that you can select. And remember, these fields are coming from the case record definition. I'm going to click OK. Next, approvers. So we're going to click on the Edit option. And if you click on this menu right here, you can see the different options there are to define as approvers. We can do it by company. We can do it by functional roles. We can define a specific user to be the approver. We can do it by support company also. So in my case, I'm going to select the functional roles. And under case management service, I'm going to select the case business analyst role. I'm going to click on this option right here. And we need to make sure that the option you selected is showing on the right side. I'm going to click Save. Next, we have the Qualify Approvers field. In here, you can also define a qualification to be used on the Approvers field. In my case, I'm going to leave it as is. And next, we have the If Multiple Approvers field. In here, we have 3 options. One must approve, all must approve, and a specific number must approve. So in my case, I'm going to select the first option, one must approve. So that means that for all users that have the case business analyst role, we need just one of them to approve the case. And now for the next section, again, we're going to leave it as is, and we're going to click on Save. So now we have our new general flow created. And if needed, you can move these flows around according to your needs. So for now, these are all the steps that you need in order to create a new approval flow. Now, as you may remember from one of our previous slides, the second step in the process to configure an approval is to create an approval chain. A chain of approvals is a series of approvals where an approval is run based on the outcome of a previous approval. To create an approval chain in business workflows, we first need to define a process for a flow group, and second, we need to associate such process with an approval flow. An approval chain can be configured for both types of approval flows. level of approval, and general approval. In the following demo, we'll take a look at the steps on how to create an approval chain. In our previous demo, we created a level up approval flow and a general approval flow. Now, let's say that you want for the level up flow to be triggered, and once it is approved, you want for a different flow to get triggered as well. And this other flow is part of a different flow group. So for this, we can create an approval chain. For this demo, I have created a general approval flow in this new flow group, so we can use it for this test. So we're going to go back to Innovation Studio. We're going to click on Case Management Service. We're going to click on Processes. And then we're going to search for Sample Chain. So this is a sample process that is provided by BMC. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this process and we're going to click on Copy. And then I'm going to provide a new name. I'm going to do Case Webinar Chaining Approval. Okay, so we now have our new process created. In here, we're going to click on the palette. We're going to search for approval. And we're going to drag the approval process brick in here. We're going to make sure that this is connected correctly. Okay, now if you see in the properties of this process, we have these variables. These are coming from the original process that we copied. We have as input variables, we have the case record, the approval status, and as output variables, we have the final status. In here, we're not going to modify anything. We're going to leave it as is. And we're going to click on the approval process brick that we added. In here, in the input map section, we're going to click on the record field. And we're going to select the case record. We're going to click OK. And on the flow group name field, we're going to click Select. And as you can see, we have the flow groups that we were seeing on the approval configuration in business workflows. So we're going to select the flow group that we want for the approval process to go to after the first approval. So in my case, I'm going to select the voluntary separation, which is where I created that general approval flow. And I'm going to do Use Selected Flow Group. Okay. So this is everything that we need to set in here. We're going to click on Save. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to hit Close. And as you can see, we have now our approval chain process created. Now we're going to go back to Business Workflows. We're going again to the approval configuration. I'm going to click on Case, then Approval Flows tab. And I'm going to go to our BWFA group. And I want for this level up flow to, once it is approved, to go to the voluntary separation group. So I'm going to expand this one. And on the process to invoke on flow outcome action section, on approve, I'm going to select the process that I just created. Okay. In my case, I'm going to just do it for on approve. You can also set it for on rejection or on error. I'm going to click Save. Okay, and one more thing to notice, this level up flow that we created, the qualification for it to be triggered is priority equals to critical. We have to make sure that the same qualification is set for the next flow that we want to be run in the approval chain. So if you see in here, we also have the priority equals to critical. And these are all the steps that you need in order to configure an approval chain. Now, the third step in the process to configure an approval is to create an approval mapping. By creating an approval mapping, we will define the case status that will trigger the approval process and the case status to which a case transitions to based on the approval process result. If required, the case business analyst can also map case templates to the mapping. In the next demo, we'll take a look at the steps on how to create an approval mapping. So as a quick recap of the steps we have performed so far, we have created both a level up approval flow and a general approval flow. We have also created an approval chain. And for our third and final step in the approval configuration process, we're going to create an approval mapping. So for this, we're going to click on Settings. We're going to click on Case Management and then Approval Mappings. As you can see in here, there's no approval mapping created yet, so we're going to click in the approval mapping option. And in here, we're going to provide some details. We're going to start with the approval mapping name. Then we have the line of business field. As you can see, this is already set according to the line of business that you're currently working on. We have the company field. I'm going to leave it as global. And then we have the status trigger. As you can see below, it mentions that the approval process will start when the case has above status. So in my case, I'm going to set it to assigned. The flow set field, I'm going to leave it as is. And then we have the status mapping section. In here, we're going to map the case status to which we want the case to go to according to the approval result. So in my case, if the approval process goes to approved, I want the case to go to in progress status. If it's rejected, I want it to go to the approval rejected status. If no approval found, I want for it to get canceled. And if there's an error, I want it for it to be canceled as well. We're going to click on Save. And now we have the approval mapping in edit mode. As you can see, there's the same fields that we already configured, but now we have two more options. So this one mentions the cases created without using any template will go through approval. You can either enable this option or disable it. I'm going to keep it as disabled for now. And then in here, we can select one or more case templates to be using this approval mapping. So in my case, I'm going to select a finance test template that I created before. You can simply click Save. And we have now created an approval mapping. So now that we have completed the approval configuration process, how can we attach the approval to a case? This is a very simple process. We basically need to create a new case and make sure that the qualification we defined in the approval flow is met. In the following demo, we will demonstrate how to attach an approval to a case. So now that the approval configuration has been completed, how can we trigger the approval? For this, we're going to create a new case by clicking on the Create option, then Case. We're going to provide a requester, and then I'm going to select a case template. This is the same case template that I provided in the approval mapping before. I'm going to click Apply. And then I'm going to make sure that the priority is set to critical, as this is the qualification we defined in the approval flow. I'm going to assign this to a group, and then I'm going to save it. I'm going to click on Go to Case. And if you remember, in the approval mapping, we defined that the approval process should get triggered when the case status is set to assigned. So I'm going to move this to assigned. And then, as you can see, the approval is now attached to the case. If I click on Show Approvers, we can see the list of users that are able to approve this. And as defined in the approval flow, we only need one of these users to approve. Now, we have different options to approve cases. We can view and approve cases from BMC Helix Business Workflows from the Case Details page. We can also do it from the BMC Helix Innovation Studio from the Approval Console. We can also do it from BMC Helix Digital Workplace Advanced from the Service Request. And we can also do it by email using the reply button. For this webinar, we'll be doing a demo of the first two options through BMC Helix Business Workflows and BMC Helix Innovation Studio. In the following demo, we will demonstrate how to approve cases from BMC Helix Business Workflows and BMC Helix Innovation Studio. So before we start with this final demo, let's do a quick recap of the configurations we have done so far. If you remember, we first created two approval flows. One was a level up approval flow. We then created a general approval flow. Then we defined an approval chain. We did this by creating a process in the case management service library, this in Innovation Studio. And in this process, we defined the flow group that it was going to be used in this chain. And finally, we created an approval mapping record. In here, if you remember, we defined the status that will trigger the approval process and the status that the case will go to according to the approval result. So, as mentioned before, there are different ways that we can view and approve cases. For this demo, we're only going to be focusing on the first two options, that is, approving from Business Workflows and approving from Innovation Studio using the Approval Console. So for the first option, this is a very simple one. As you can see, I have already a case created for this, and it is already in pending approval. So as an approver, if you open up the case, you're going to see the same. You're going to see the approval banner in here. You're going to see two options, one that says approve, and then you can also reject. And then you also have the option to show approvers. In this case, since this is a level up approval, it's going to be showing only one user, the requester's manager. In this case is Liam. So I'm going to click on back. I'm currently logged in as Liam Shea. So I'm going to approve this case by clicking on the approve option. You can enter a reason if you want. I'm going to just leave it blank and I'm going to click on approve. So as you can see, the case has now been approved, and according to the approval mapping that we defined before, the case is now showing in progress status. Now, for the second option to approve a case using the approval console, I have created this case. As you can see, this is already in pending approval status, and this case is actually using an approval chain, the one that we created before. So that means that we're going to be getting two approvals in here, one after the other. So to go to the approval console, we have two options. We can either go directly by using the URL like this, or we can go by using the application launcher. This can be found on both Business Workflows or Innovation Studio. So you can click on the application launcher, then you can click on approval, and this will take you to the approval console as well. Now, in here we can see that there's already the approval pending. If I select it And on the right side of the screen, you can see different options: general, approvers, questions, and so on. So under general, you can see some details about the request. If you click on approvers, you can see the list of approvers pending. In here is just one, since the first approval for this chain is level up approval. So we'll be just having one approver in here. So to approve in here, you have to select the approval, and then you have the options on top. You have approve, reject, or hold. So for this case, I'm going to click on approve. You can again provide a justification reason. I'm going to click on save. Okay, and that's it. The approval is gone. Now I'm gonna go back to the case. In here is still showing, so I'm going to refresh this page. Okay, and now we have the second approval showing. If I click on show approvers, you can see it's a different one. Now we can see a list of users. So I'm gonna go back to the approval console. I'm going to refresh in here. And now we have the second approval waiting for us. So again, I'm going to select it. And if I click on approvers in here, you can see that there's an approver list actually showing. It's just not one user anymore. And this is because this is a general approval flow, and we set it to have all users with case business analyst role to show up in here. So again, I'm going to click on approve. I'm going to click on save. And that's it. The approval is gone. I'm going to go back to the case. I'm going to refresh. And as you can see, the approval is gone in here, and the case is now in progress status as we defined in the approval mapping. So this will be all for this demo on how to approve cases from business workflows and from the approval console in Innovation Studio. Let's do a quick recap of the topics we reviewed today. First, we did a quick overview of what is an approval, when are approvals needed, the prerequisites for approvals, and who can be an approver. Then we talked about the steps and entities we need to configure an approval, and we also did a demo on each one of them. We demoed how to create a case so the approval can get attached to it. And finally, we discussed the different options there are to view and approve cases. For further information on approvals, you can refer to following BMC documentation on configuring case approvals, types of approvals, defining an approval chain, defining an approval mapping, approving requests by using the approval console. Thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you have found this information useful. If you need to watch this webinar later, do not hesitate to subscribe to our official BMC YouTube channel.